Thank you all for having us here, and thanks to the Danko Institute for organizing this. I must say, I've been, these days of social media makes, it very interesting when you are on the private sector side, now you're sitting on this side, and you're listening to the comments, and, it comes at you hard and fast, and you realize the astonishment within the public sector, within the country about what has transpired and where we are today. But having said that, I know I knew when I was in the private sector 2-3 years ago that there were problems with some certain banks. I used to manage assets, and I had clear instructions to all my traders and fund managers that you don't park money in any of these institutions. So the knowledge was out there. The question was that what was done about it. And I think two of the panelists have alluded to the fact that as for the laws, they are there, and I don't think we have any doubt about the strength of our laws. We have some of the most stringent regulations and laws in the world. And so, in answer to Bernard's question, it's not about whether we were confident being from the fiscal side with the proposals that BOG had put forward. I don't think we had any doubt in the quality of the laws to be able to ensure that this the financial sector was properly regulated. The problem was with the enforcement. Really and truly, that was the problem. So what we needed to do was to be confident about the enforcers. And, I think we need to find a new nickname for the governor, because he is definitely an enforcer. He is very straightforward. He's to the point. He knows what he has to get done, and he's very focused. And with his two deputies, I think they gave us every assurance and every confidence that they knew exactly what needed to be done, and they were willing to do it. I think that has been the key issue that has been missing in this whole thing, because everybody knew what the problems were. And also, I think systems. We need to begin to realize that human beings make mistakes, and that people can be persuaded to look the other way. And you need to more and more put in place the systems that don't give them the discretion and ability to, massage the numbers or change things around. Because the reports were there. If you go and look through the board minutes, you see all the reports. They're there, banking supervision, they went out, they came back, they made their report. Somehow, mysteriously, between when the report was given and when the actions were supposed to take in, something changed. It's amazing. It's like there's some gremlins in there that just get up and tweak things around. So, you realize that if you have systems in place, then it removes that temptation for human intervention and for things to change. So I think we need to more and more rely on putting in place the right systems to ensure that going forward, this doesn't happen again. The other thing I think is about the concept of being your brother's keeper. It's amazing, but we've gone to a point now in Ghana where there's an armed robbery going on, or some car is being hijacked on the road, and people will just drive by. Nobody will stop. Or you can be hurt by the roadside and try and flag down a car. Nobody stops. Nobody stops to help anybody. And that's not the way it was when we were growing up. People cared about each other. You could go across to your next door neighbor and go and borrow, some milk that you replace the next day, and so forth and so on. We looked out for each other. Nowadays, nobody does. I mean, we all knew, in the banking circles, everybody knew which banks were the bad banks, which ones were doing what they were doing. But nobody reported it or, pointed it out or even came out to make any kind of broad statement. I remember on the politics side, there was a lot of noise. I mean, politicians won't hesitate to go to court to file this or that and that against so and so and so. But I didn't see that happening when we knew perfectly well what was going in the banking sector. And nobody stepped up and said, hey, look, the way things are going, we're going to be in trouble. Let us insist on people doing the right thing and calling people out and saying that so and so and so and so should be held accountable. And if we don't look out for each other and put each other in check, we're not going to collectively as a people be able to move forward. Same thing with tax collection. Nobody pays any taxes. We don't care. I mean, we just move along. But then when something happens, we're all complaining. I mean, something like this where we have incurred a 6 billion tax bill. Now, all of a sudden, everybody is alarmed because they realize that, that money is going to come out of my pocket. Aha, now you're worried about it. But when you didn't think about it that way, it was like somebody else's problem. So until the problem seems to be hitting you directly in the pocket, that's when you get concerned. But if we were collectively concerned and our brother's keeper up front, we'll never have to get to this situation in the first place. So I think in conclusion, what I'm trying to say is that the systems are there. It's about enforcement. And it's about people realizing that if you do things wrongly, you have to pay a price for it. So we really need to see this through to the very end and make sure that lessons are learned and we don't find ourselves back here again. Thank you.
Thank you. So now, still at the Dankwa Institute Forum, I have to bring in the two financial people briefly. I want your quick thoughts on what has happened with, don't forget, the first two banks, they were sort of pushed into GCB, which is our biggest bank. We took some loan to support them. Was it the right decision? And then don't forget that the 5 other banks, there were different things. Okay, for some, it was poor capital. For others, it was taking depositors' funds to do other things. So the formation of consolidated banks. So if Ebenezer first, Dr. Eli, your quick thoughts on the solution. There's a mic in front of you. Then I'll take Dr. Osei. So what are your thoughts on what has happened economically and financially? The decisions taken. Use this one. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. I think I would respond to your question, but before then I would like to tie in a brief explanation on 3 key points you mentioned, especially the finance minister talked about difference between the minimum capital requirements and also what is happening.
Yes.
And so you actually
yes.
That is very true. The minimum capital required, the new one is about 400 million. Now
Yes.
if you look at the challenges in some of the banks,
the
sums or the quantum of money is just beyond the 400 million we're talking about. In the case of Unibank, for example, it has a capital deficit of about 7.4 billion Ghana cedis. And so if you look at the fact that the minimum capital required in Unibank is just 400 million, and it has a capital deficit of 7.4 billion Ghana cedis, then the minimum capital required in this case, the deficit is about 18.5 times the amount. In percentage terms, that is 1,850%. So if it were to the minimum capital, they would have easily met it. That is what he meant by there's a difference between the minimum capital required and also what is happening now. It is a matter of pure mismanagement, and that is exactly the difference between the two in this particular situation. Second one, talking about making other mistakes. What it basically actually understood as submission, it means there's no room for witch hunting. It's a matter of ensuring that the due process is followed and justice is served. But in the course of doing that, if the state should err or falter, then it is not deliberate, but then it could be a genuine mistake which could be pardoned. And the last one, he talked about 50,000 jobs to be lost. We lost through the current impasse between August last year and this year. That is very true, but there is a turnaround. There is a way around it. Fortunately for us as a nation, we have quite a number of applications on the desk of the governor for new banks to be opened. Now, these applications were suspended last year for obvious reasons, because we had too many universal banks in the system. We had about 35 of them, compared with Nigeria, which has only about 25, and we had struggling banks. So there was the need to suspend the issuance of licenses and ensure that those within the system are able to stand on their feet before new ones are introduced. Now that we are streamlining the system, we'll be able to know exactly the number of banks that will survive in terms of universal banks. And this will create the opportunity for new licenses to be issued. Now, the new banks will be able to tap into the experience of those who will be laid off through this situation. So there will be a revolving effect. And these job losses are likely to be eroded or taken out through the issuance of new licenses somewhere by the end of the year or next year thereabout. So I don't think we have to raise strong alarms with regards to the job situation. Under the current situation, it would. But the situation can be corrected.
I need to make a quick correction, though. The finance minister did not say that 50,000 jobs will be lost. He said that
they are affected.
No, he said that it's a 50,000 strong sector. This is my understanding.
No, it's jobs.
Unless I'm hearing wrong.
Jobs. We're talking about.
Did you say that 50,000 jobs?
The 7 banks.
No, he didn't say that. No, so he said that the sector employs together 50,000 people.
Okay.
Because of course, even the largest bank, Unibank, if you take permanent staff, it's not up to 1,000. But if you bring in non-permanent, it's 1,800. If you bring in related companies, it's 4,000. So it would be strange for him to say 50,000, and I'm sure he's here, he can correct that. Well, so I'm just giving that as a factual point.
Well, then maybe the figure has to do with estimated number of people employed in the financial sector.
Yes, in the financial sector, yes.
Who might be invariably affected because there will be trickle-down effect from these 7 banks, and that is very true. Whatever number is affected, obviously will be reabsorbed into the financial subsector through some of these initiatives. The issuance of new licenses will help to do that. Now back to your question.
You haven't answered my question still.
No, I'm not coming to that. Now you talked about the government coming in to bail out the first 2 banks, the UT Bank and Capital Bank. I think in my first submission I did state that the responsibility of the nation through the central bank is to ensure that the economy keeps revolving, and it does not get stagnant in the process. And as a result, you must always come in with a form of bailout where necessary so that there will be stimulation in the economy. What happened in the case of UT Bank and Capital Bank, as I've indicated or illustrated somewhere, I could repeat here, it's just a matter of a mother with several children, the older ones trying to bully the younger ones. Now, before the younger ones who are numeratively more than the older ones could run to the mother to cry that we have been bullied, the mother could quickly come in and address the situation with the younger ones and later turn to the older ones to find out why they behaved the way they did. So the government's intervention with that 2.2 billion was intended to ensure that the excesses of the operations of Capital and UT Bank will not be adversely felt by their depositors or customers, but then the operations would continue while the government resort to the owners of UT and Capital Bank for explanations as to why their operations degenerated into loss incurring and not profit deriving in perpetuity. So it was very, very important. And this is the reason why we are still not hearing any negatives with regards to the customers of UT Bank and Capital Bank that have been absorbed into the GCB. So that is why it is very important. And when you come to the second one, the 5 consolidated banks.
Yeah, I wanted Osei to tackle that. Thank you. So that was Dr. Ebenezer. Actually, I'll take comments from Osei Sibe. Yes, on the same question.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, the response of the central bank, is this something that is good or not? If you look at the banking sector across the globe, what is really happening or what is happening in Ghana today is not unprecedented. It's happened before in several other countries. The recent one was the global financial crisis that happened in the United States. And we all saw the response of the Federal Reserve, what it did. So in many cases, the most important thing will be what the central bank does after the crisis, because the crises are often bound to happen. That is why when you look at the key functions of the central bank, we have the supervisory role, the regulatory role, being the bank of, for the government, the banker of banks, and all of that. The last one is often being the lender of last resort. And there is reason for that being put at the last, because the framers of such legislation anticipate that there could be crisis one day. And when that crisis comes, the central bank must be able to position itself to forestall any crisis. So the lender of last resort of the central bank is essentially to forestall banks from failing and to ensure the stability and the soundness of the banking sector. And that is, like I said, in the United States, the central bank, they were there. They also had regulations and all of that. Yet the banking sector ran into difficulty. Today, we are parting the Federal Reserve for the actions that it took to restore stability in the banking sector. So, for me, what the central bank has done thus far is crucial. It is very important to making sure that the crisis did not have the contagion effect to lead to economic crisis, because there is now a very semblance of it could easily happen. If you look at what is happening now, since the non-performing loans ratio started going up, you see that there is huge decline in credit growth. Now, credit growth 2014 was 50%. Today, as we speak, it's around 12.8%. That is dangerous for the economy. And this could have a vicious cycle, because once you don't have enough credit expansion, you're not going to have banks making enough profit. And that means that the banks cannot clean their books, and they also become credit apprehensive. The economy is not going to grow because there's not going to be enough flow of credit into the economy, and the banking sector balance sheet begins to deteriorate further and further, and that alone in itself can trigger crisis.
So let me just get something. So you're saying that what has happened is preventing the financial crisis from becoming an economic crisis,
exactly,
which is much deeper than a financial crisis.
Much deeper from the, yes. So for any central bank worth its salt, what it has to do is to have a bailout policy. Immediately, some of the banks may not be able to be rescued. The central bank is the financial rescuer, but some of them, depending upon the degree to which their asset has deteriorated, there's no way the central bank can. But if those banks are allowed to stay, it can trigger contagion effect on the other banks. So the best policy will be to let those banks go immediately and find ways of protecting deposited funds. There are others that can have liquidity support for them to stay afloat, and that the central bank must be able to immediately identify to support them liquidity-wise. And the government also have a role, safety nets, to also support such banks, because the danger is fine. We may lose, or some people may lose some jobs in the process, but look at the bigger picture. In the event that the central bank is not able to bring sanity to the system, and this thing gets out of hand, we're going to have the entire financial system breaking down, and the job loss is going to be much bigger. And in fact, once the financial sector breaks down, your entire economy cannot stay on its feet. So the liquidity support is crucial.
Great.
I want to for that safety.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I'm cutting. I want to get a comment from the finance minister on some of the points raised on the finance side. Then I can move to the legal side, because I'm trying to keep the discussion flowing. So if you can hand your mic to him, okay, he's coming up. Fantastic. So I think Ken has realized that if he doesn't come, things will spoil. So he's coming to. So you take and correct the things quickly.
Great. No, thank you very much. I'm going to rush to have a meeting on banking with the AG and co. So I need to go. But really to thank DI for this platform and for the richness of the conversation and that we are having. So I think really what Charles, my colleague, Deputy Minister, was saying was the beginning of us having conversations about these issues, so that there's going to be a little bit more of honesty as we look at each other's eye and say, is this going right? And that's what it is. As we leave the IMF program, the issue of whether we can replace it with our own sort of social partnership agreement in which these conversations are robust, freewheeling, and we can really enforce the laws and use the institutions as they are. But as Ace and Charles mentioned, I'm really very comfortable and confident with the new management of the central bank, and that is really key. And so we should hold them up and applaud them. And in that same vein, as I mentioned, my letter is going out to them, ensuring that they go through the whole process, which they've started already, of the restructuring, of finding out who opened the floodgates and what they did with liquidity support, routing it through other institutions, knowing where it was going, etc., so that never again will the Bank of Ghana be in the middle of such disgrace. In the end, I think we have essentially stopped the potential contagion from the finance into an economic crisis, and I think people should be confident about that. President was very clear about where depositors stood, and his key thing when we are always bringing economic policy is leave the little people alone. Okay, and it's a constant theme that he has, and that reinforces the direction in which we are going. As I look forward to this opportunity, is that, well, what do you need? Do we need, Canada has 5 banks, Nigeria has 25. Do we need 34? And we don't. But do we need Ghanaians to participate in the financial industry? We do, you know. But what type of Ghanaian should be in the financial industry? And that's a fit and proper test that has to come through. So as we envision it right now from the ministry, we are expecting the Consolidated Development Bank, Consolidated Bank would become, you know, sort of equivalent to GCB, grow stronger with it, and that will be that. I think there are a whole bunch of indigenous banks, about 5, 6 of them, who have begun discussions on merger so that by the end of the year they can meet that. And we need to find a way to support that so they can maybe potentially concentrate on sort of a SME financing, which is key to our development. And that's what creates a vibrancy in the economy. Then I did mention that we're looking at NIB, ADB coming together. I think we are still on that course to do that, because at the core of that will then be creating, you know, that capacity to look at this whole industrialization, 1D, 1F, in an organized and structured way of a strong institution that does that. So aggregate industrialization would be taken off. Then, of course, I have what I call GESL, which was to create a guarantee system to be able to support agric. We may have to look at that and see whether that can also be even further strengthened so that we have another development bank that, you know, moves us forward beyond, you know, the small industries that we'll be able to do. So with that, you're sort of cleaning the system and creating a robust chassis for the transformation that we envision. So as long as we go ahead to clean up and to prosecute so that it doesn't happen again, it's really an opportunity to build that framework for sustained growth that we are looking for. But first and foremost, contagion towards a crisis, economic crisis, has been eliminated. We're confident about that. We are looking, as you can see, to ensure that depositors' funds are safe, and we are going to do that. But even with that, you know, the sophisticated investor who took his money to a bank that he knew could not bring it back to them. The corporate governance in the institution, as long as they are government-related, they will be made to look at those things too. So nobody is going to get out of the net. And we have to be careful and meticulous about it, because you don't want to lose through some, you know, sort of court proceedings, and then you miss all of that. But the commitment is clear. Making sure depositors' money are safe is clear. Our confidence in the new management of the banking system is also there. But the other excitement is now that the public's care and interest in that, because that keeps everybody on their toes, and you also become a lot more discerning in where you take your money. So thank you again, and really appreciate all of this.
Thank you, Finance Minister Kenneth Koreata.